If you've ever noticed that there's always one person in every group who seems to hold everything together, the one people call when they're overwhelmed, the one who listens to everyone's problems, the one who always seems calm, stable, dependable, that person is often called the strong friend. They're the one others rely on. But something people rarely notice is this: the person who carries everyone else's emotions often feels like they have nowhere safe to put their own. Because when everyone sees you as the strong one, breaking down can start to feel like you're breaking the role you were given. And over time, that role becomes something deeper than just behavior. It becomes identity. Most people imagine the strong friend as someone who is naturally resilient, someone who just doesn't struggle the way others do. But in reality, what looks like strength on the outside is often a pattern that formed very early. Many strong friends learned, sometimes without realizing it, that their emotions didn't have as much room as everyone else's. Maybe they were the responsible sibling growing up. Maybe they were the one adults trusted to be mature. Maybe they noticed that when they stayed calm and helpful, people around them felt better. So they adapted. They became the listener, the problem solver, the steady presence. And slowly, something subtle began to happen. Instead of asking, "What do I need right now?" their attention shifted to, "What does everyone else need?" You can see this pattern in small, everyday behaviors. The strong friend is often the one who checks in on everyone else, but rarely shares what's happening in their own life. They respond to messages quickly when someone is struggling, but if they're having a hard day, they might disappear quietly instead of reaching out. In group conversations, they're often the emotional anchor. They diffuse tension, smooth things over, keep things stable. And when they do feel overwhelmed, they tend to handle it privately, not because they don't have emotions, but because somewhere along the way, they learned that being the stable one keeps the system working. And here's something interesting about that. The strong friend isn't always consciously trying to hide their struggles. Often it feels more automatic than that. When you've spent years being the one who supports others, your brain starts to associate vulnerability with risk, not necessarily because people would reject you, but because it might disrupt the balance you've been holding. If the strong one falls apart, who holds everything else together? So instead of breaking down in front of people, the strong friend often develops quiet coping patterns. They might process things alone late at night. They might distract themselves with responsibilities. They might minimize their own problems because other people have it worse. And to the outside world, it can look like they're handling life effortlessly. But inside, the emotional load can get surprisingly heavy. And here's where it gets interesting. Most people think the strong friend avoids vulnerability because they're afraid of looking weak. But the real reason is usually more complex than that. It's not always about weakness, it's about control. When you're the person who stabilizes others, you become very aware of how emotions move through a room. You notice when someone is anxious. You notice when tension is rising. You notice when people need reassurance. Over time, you become skilled at managing emotional environments. And vulnerability introduces uncertainty. If you open up fully, you can't control how others will react. They might worry about you. They might not know how to respond. The dynamic might shift. For someone used to being the emotional stabilizer, that uncertainty can feel uncomfortable. There's also another quiet layer beneath it. When people consistently come to you for support, you start to become known for that role. Friends trust you. Family relies on you. People say things like, "You're always so strong. You're the one who keeps us grounded. I don't know what we do without you." And those words are meant as compliments, but they also reinforce a subtle message. This is who you are supposed to be. So when the strong friend feels overwhelmed, they may hesitate to show it. Not because they don't trust the people around them, but because the identity they've built doesn't seem to include space for falling apart. They're the safe place for others, but they're not always sure where their own safe place is. You can sometimes see this in the way strong friends talk about their struggles. When they do share something difficult, they often soften it immediately. They might laugh it off, change the subject, add something like, "But it's not a big deal." It's almost as if part of them is saying, "Don't worry, I'm still the strong one." Because keeping that image intact feels safer than letting people see the full weight they carry. And over time, this can create a strange emotional paradox. The strong friend is deeply connected to people. They're trusted, respected, often loved for the stability they provide. Yet at the same time, they can feel unexpectedly alone, not because people don't care about them, but because the version of them that others see is often the composed, supportive version, not the messy, overwhelmed, uncertain one that exists underneath like everyone else. The truth is, strength in this context isn't about having fewer emotions. It's about learning, often very early, how to contain them so other people feel safe. And that ability can be powerful. It helps relationships. It stabilizes families. It supports friendships.
But it can also quietly convince someone that their own emotional needs should stay in the background. And once you start noticing this pattern, you begin to see the strong friend differently. The calm person in the group, the one everyone depends on, the one who always seems okay. Sometimes they're not just strong. Sometimes they're simply the person who learned how to carry more than anyone realized. And once you see that pattern, you can't really unsee it.